I wish I had a cool intro song. Sorry, I always have to make it show the recorder so I can have my sound levels in front of me. Let's adjust the mic just a little. All right. Hello, and welcome to an episode of Fun Times and Statistics. As you can see, I have the notes for the Chapter 7 Minitab up and in front of us. I also have opened Minitab Express. So clearly I've already installed Minitab Express. If you don't have Minitab Express installed on your Mac, you will need to obviously do that first before viewing this video. This might be your first ever video, so I will try to be very detailed. The directions for using a Mac are a little bit different than using the PCs that we do in the lab if you're taking in-person statistics. You'll notice that this is the icon for Express, just in case you've never seen it before. And the first time you open Express, usually it gives you an option to watch an introductory video on how to use Minitab Express. I wouldn't necessarily, there goes my recorder again, recommend that you watch that video simply because it talks about some things that, well, are even just beyond the scope of this course. And everything that it covers I will cover as I go through this. But if you need a review of, some things, you can go take a look at it, maybe later in the course, to remind you of some basics. So the first thing you'll notice is that my version of the Mac OS is High Sierra, so yours might look a little bit different than mine. I'm also running it in dark mode, which is just a different color scheme. Don't let that confuse you. The only thing it's really going to affect is how my Word document looks. I won't be doing any cutting and pasting or screenshotting in this one like we do in class, simply because you can rewatch parts of the video if you need those sections. Alright, introduction done. The other thing to notice about Minitab Express is that when you click onto that window to make it active, you'll notice that you have buttons along the top, as well as options in the top, what's the name of this? Ribbon from your Mac as well. So if you expand the pane for Minitab Express so that this covers the entire screen, you will see every option that this has. When you have it half screen like I do right now, you might not be able to see that. So right now I'm actually going to turn off the navigator because I don't need it. So I'm going to say hide navigator from the view menu. And then I'm going to go ahead and do some problems. So in Minitab 18, everything we need to do probability is found in the graphs menu. Express knows you're going to use that a lot, so they've actually put it in this separate probability menu. So to do number 1, we're going to randomly select a resident from the city and see what is the probability an individual will have an income of less than $30,000. If you haven't read the key information, you should pause and do that now so you know what I'm going to get up to with this. So to do that probability, I'm going to grab this probability menu, choose distribution plot, and then choose display probability. We'll never use any of the other settings. I'm going to go through and do that again in case that was too quick for you. So I'm going to choose probability, distribution plot, and I'm always going to choose display probability. We don't use any of the other ones in this class. Alright, so it's on a normal, which this is normally distributed, which is exactly what I want. My mean is 45,000. And my standard deviation is 15,000. Alrighty. So the next thing is I need to notice that I want to do less than $30,000, the probability that it's less than that. So I know an X value and I want to find a probability. So I want to give Minitab what I know and have it produce what I don't know. So then I need to change this radial button to X value. And since I want to know less than, I want all the values that are smaller than 30,000 or those that lie left to it on the number line. So I want left tail. So I'm just clicking to highlight these. So to input that X value, I'm going to do my $30,000 that I want. And then we're going to hit OK, and that should produce the correct graph for us. So if you need to, pause the video at this step, make sure your settings match mine, and then go ahead and hit OK. Alright, and there's my graph. So there's a couple ways you can grab the graph on Minitab Express and put it into your document. If you have a magic mouse like I do, you can do a right click in the gray space and choose to copy the graph and then paste it into your document. Now the way you paste in a Mac, in case you're unfamiliar with them, and I had to learn this before making this video, sorry, that was my email dinging, is you need to hit the Command key, hold it down, and hit the V, and that should paste it. Ooh. hate the rainbow, it scares me. That's also how you can copy if you don't have a magic mouse. If you lay your mouse somewhere in the gray space, you can hold down the command key and hit copy, and it will copy it. Notice how it highlighted in the upper left of my screen that I was copying. In case you missed that, there it is. It knows I'm doing copy. If you really aren't comfortable using your keyboard, or if your keyboard doesn't have the command word on it, it's the square that looks like it has little circles at all the corners. That button. Or you can go up to, with the graph highlighted in blue like I have right here, go to edit and then copy. So notice there's the symbology behind what I did. And then obviously in the Word document, same thing. Click in here and choose edit, and there's the paste option. So that's how you can copy and paste your graphs. I'm not going to copy and paste my graphs for all of my questions in here just because, well, I don't want to. Just as a reminder, when you're looking at this graph, keep in mind x values lie along the x-axis, and probability is found by looking at area. So this red area is all the values less than 30,000, and this value right here is my probability. So this is the value that's my answer, and that is what I would write as my answer, not necessarily the graph. Alrighty, let's do number 2. You randomly select a resident from the city. What's the probability that they will have an income more than 80,000? So I'm going to do make similar. This is the same thing in Minitab 18 as doing a, my brain is failing me. Edit last dialogue. There we go. So I'm just going to be doing the same thing again. So I'm going to have it repeat its last action. And so it's going to remember, oh yeah, the last thing you did was a normal with this mean and standard deviation. How do you want to do it different? Well, now I want to do more than 80,000. If you remember from the notes for this chapter, if you were doing this by hand, to do a more than, you would have to do a, change this into a left to use the table and do 1 minus the left. So we'd be doing less than 80,000. So people that have more than 80,000 do not have, are not less than 80,000. So you subtract out the not part. And then you'd have to change it into a z-score and look up at z on the z-table and then do the subtraction once you find the probability that goes with that z-score. And you already see how this is more steps, because all I had to do is go change that 3 to an 8 and make sure I'm on right tail and I'm good to go. So again, I'm swirling this so that the mouse gets bigger and you notice that I changed this. And then we hit OK. Woohoo. So our answer for this one, I'm just going to type in. So it's 0.009815. I know I did a lot of decimal places for that one, but it's also a very small value, so it's important that I include maybe a little bit more information. Don't round to 2 decimal places when your first 2 decimal places are 0. I mean, I don't know, you guys know better than that, I think, at this point. Let me actually hit enter a couple times to get this onto the next page. There we go. Alrighty, you randomly select residents of the city. What is the probability that the individual will have an income between 45,000 and 60,000? So I'm going to go back to Minitab. I'm going to select probability. Oh no, wait, I don't need to do that. I can do make similar because I'm still on the same distribution. Actually, let me show you what happens if you don't do that. So if you went to probability, distribution plot, and then display probability, bam! Notice it zeroed out my mean and standard deviation. So I got to re-input those. 45,000. And was it 15,000? Now I'm second guessing myself. Now that I'm narrating and doing a video, let's make sure I do it right. Oh yeah, that'll be a good time. Okay, and then I want between 2 values. So you look at your pictures and you're like, oh, I'm on probabilities again. Switched up to X values. I need between 2 of them so it looks more like this image where it's the middle. So I want 45,000. Oh, I'm on right tail. Oops. I'm making all kinds of mistakes today. 45,000. And 65,000. One warning about the middle option that we're using here is that notice your x1 lies to the left of x2. That means when you input these values, the x1 has to always be the smaller of the two, because since it lies to the left on the number line or on the value scale along the x-axis, that means it must be smaller than x2. So if you try to put 65,000 in first, it'll actually give you an error. And if you get that error, it's pretty simple. You just switch your 2 values. All right, we are ready to rock. Let's get this. And there we go. So it appears it's just a little bit bigger than 40%. Woohoo! So I rounded that one to 4 places. 4 places is usually a good spot. All right. So if you look at 4, 5, and 6, you'll notice that they're asking for cutoff values rather than probabilities, and they're giving you percentages instead of giving you values. So here I'm not given dollars, I'm given a probability and asked to find the dollars. So this was a lot like the examples where I knew a percentage or a percentile and I wanted to find the value that cuts off for where that area starts. So for instance, 45,000 to 65,000 would be an example of the cutoff values that go with this in particular percentage. That's actually kind of a bad example. Hold on, I got to bring back the navigator. I got to get back to one that I can do this with. Here we go. So this one works. So this would be 80,000 would be the cutoff value for the upper, like 0.98153%. That was terrible. I judge myself. Let's do this. So I want to find the top 1%, and clearly I don't have that here, so let's go ahead and find that. So I'll hit make similar, so I already have the information for my distribution in here. And here's where this is different. So I want the top 1% or the upper 1%. So I know a probability. So I'm going to click specify probability. I'm going to select the image that looks like the upper 1%, which would be the right tail. And then I'm going to put in 1%. So keep in mind 1% is actually 0.01, not 0.1. That is a common mathematical mistake that a lot of people will make. And that's why I included 4 and number 5 to look like they do. Let's go ahead and hit OK. Or if you haven't done percentages into decimals in a while, keep in mind to find the decimal equivalent of a percentage. What you're doing is dividing it by 100 because percents are just written like out of 100. It assumes 100 is your total. And that's equivalent to moving your decimal place 2 places. Let's hit OK and we'll get our answer. So it looks like that is the cutoff value. So notice now my answer is going to be in dollars. So $79,895.20. Woohoo! There you go. Okay, let's look at the next one. All right, so that was upper. Let's do a lower. So we want to do the lower 10% of incomes. I'm going to click make similar again since I'm still using the same distribution. Obviously, if I had a different distribution I was working with or if this was a new problem, I wouldn't be clicking make similar. Alrighty, so now I want the lower 10%. So that's going to be on the lower end of the distribution or a left tail. And then 10%, moving the decimal place 2 places. This would be a 10, not a 1 or a 0.01. And that's about all there is to this. Let's go ahead and hit OK. Ta-da! So for this one, my answer is $25,776.70. Doo 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 doo. Music for no reason. No, and my thing's gone, so I can't tell if I'm being too loud or not. Awesome. Let me move the mic up a little just in case. Okay. Whew. Last but not least, we're going to find the cutoff values. So notice there'll be 2 of them for the central 50%. So like if the area was in the middle, it's going to be one that's going to make the lower and one that's going to make the upper. And I want the middle to be 50%. So I'm going to show you 2 different ways to do this. So once again, hitting make similar. I'm going to first use the equal tails option. All right, so looking at this picture, I want 50% in the middle, and notice it only gives me 1 probability. It's going to take that probability and divide it into the 2 tails. So 50% in the middle, then the other 50% is left for the 2 tails. So 50%. So similarly, if I wanted the middle 60%, I would put 40% in the 2 tails because that's what would be left over because everything underneath the curve has to add up to 100% or 1 if you don't want to do this as a percentage. So usually I write it like this to remind myself, oh yeah, that's 50%, 0.05. Let's hit OK. And there we go. Now this looks a little weird because it divided it for us and it's like, hey, you got 25% over here, 25% over here, and notice there are 2 values that make my answer, this 34,000 and some change, and this 55,000 and some change. So you would have 2 answers here. $34,802.70. Oops, I forgot my dollar sign. I'll fix that in a minute. And I'll remember it this time. 55,117 and 30 cents. I wish there was a way to make this font bigger because that's kind of tiny. I hope you guys can see it. Oh, if not and you're following along, then you know when you get your answer, if it matches mine, that you did this correctly. And hopefully your font's a little bigger than mine. I might have to mess with that today. Sorry, I haven't had a Mac very long. There we go. So let me show you one other way to do this. So the two-tail thing seemed kind of confusing and you're expecting it to shade the area in the middle. This could be a little disappointing. If that was the case, then you'll hit Make Similar and we'll select Middle. Now middle, notice how they made it lopsided on purpose, like one probability on one side of this can be bigger than the other. So if you wanted to do something where you had like 60% below and maybe like 10% above and 30% in the middle, this would totally do that. But we don't want that. We want the middle 50%, sorry. The central 50%, which means the stuff below it will be, just 25% and the stuff above it will be 25%. So if you're paying attention to some of this and how it relates to earlier in descriptive statistics, what I'm really doing here by finding the cutoff for the central 50% is I'm finding the first and third quartile. Fun facts, because they split the data into quarters. Yay! Let's hit OK. And lo and behold, it produces a different graph, but the same values. So it answers the question just as easily. So depending on which one you like, you don't have to do this twice. You just do the one you want. Okay? So if you found one of these two that I just did at the end for number 6 a little easier than the other, then do the other one. I mean, do the... tripping over my own words. Do the one you find easier. Got it? Don't do what I'm doing, which is like everything under the sun, because that's kind of my job. All right, Man, the stop recording button also, like short keys, is very similar to the start recording one, so that's not good. Bye.